This new world began with the creation of people and spirits and was entirely filled with harmony among creatures. Spirits shared their power with people, and with it, they could use magic. According to one saying, where there is good, there will always be evil. People began to abuse magic for their own benefit and decided to start a great war, in order to take away its power from the spirit. As a result, the spirits had to hide their true appearance on Earth. Once the spirits disappeared, all magic disappeared. The earth dried up, and people gradually began to die. And at that moment, when everyone was already despairing, someone screamed with tears in their eyes. The man screamed and cried furiously as he could no longer continue to do nothing and just watch so many good and innocent people die. He could not forget how merciful everyone was to him, so he asked that he be given a miracle so that people could live. The last spirit that remained to live on human earth listened to his plea and turned his tears into a beautiful river as a final gesture of generosity. Thanks to the power of this miracle, life was revived on earth again. The people proclaimed that man king, and the country was named Lacrima, which meant tears. In the distant future, Lacrima became a great empire and gained extreme power. Many years later in the present, a young girl screamed that she was not going anywhere. The maids stood and whispered. They did not understand why it was so noisy on such a beautiful day. One of the maids said that a letter had arrived from the imperial palace, and it said that their mistress had been chosen as a candidate for the role of crown princess. The young lady wanted to run away and not let this happen, because she heard that the crown prince had too difficult a character, and none of the girls could stand him. So they all ran away, and now the only lady left in the empire is the young lady who must marry him. She knew that the crown prince was still the same person, and she hoped that he would choose another lady. In terms of her capriciousness, the young girl was in no way inferior to the crown prince. She furiously screamed that she did not want to marry him. The girl hoped to avoid such a fate. Finally, that spirit conveyed a few more words to the man who became the king. He said that the king's heirs from generation to generation would work miracles with the help of tears. But if people forget about their tears, the country will fall. This is a story about a country built from tears, about the crown prince who has long forgotten how to cry. The young girl screamed heart-rendingly that she did not want to marry the crown prince. She wanted happiness, but not with him, because she knew from rumors what kind of person he was. The thought of marriage without love frightened her. Tears of blessing, a power generated by the first emperor that is passed down from generation to generation. When a person with this power sheds his tears, it will mean that a miracle has happened. A young boy sat in tears next to a wounded woman. He heard from his uncle that the tears of the royal family work wonders, but I've never seen it with my own eyes. The man told him that even the dead could be brought back to life, but he himself could not believe it. The man walked up to the young boy with a grin and said that he should think it over carefully, since the woman was accused of murdering the emperor. The young boy knew that his mother would never do such a thing. He knew that the current situation was very suspicious. The young man looked tearfully at his uncle. The man said, "Losing your own mother can be heartbreaking." The man was sure that fate was still favorable to the boy, since he could inherit the throne and become crown prince much earlier. He assured him not to be so broken over little things. The man told the boy to stay close to him. The young man was very angry from the loss of loved ones. He was angry with his uncle for saying such things. The boy grabbed the broken glass and swung it, because he knew that on the day of his father's death, his uncle smiled suspiciously as he left the room where his father was. In the last minutes of his life, his mother said that the young man should not cry, since the crown prince's tears were very precious, and many people would desire them. She assured him that he should not be sad, should not sympathize, and should not suffer. He had to be cold towards everyone, and he needed to completely forget about his feelings. She assured him that the emperor should be just such a person. If he sheds his tears for someone, it will mean that the person is too valuable for him. The young man listened to his mother's last words and wanted to come closer to her, but the guards of the young crown prince pulled him away and took him away from his mother. He listened to her words from afar and stopped crying. He knew he had to make himself strong and not let others bring him down. 14 years later, after the death of the emperor and empress, people forgot about the true meaning of tears and only longed for the miracles that would bring them strength. But Rayton, the current emperor, did not use the tears of blessing, the power of which is endowed on every emperor. Tears of blessing can also be shed by other members of the imperial family. Although the crown prince had miraculous powers, he looked down on people, and only mocking arrogance was visible in his eyes. He turned from a small, fragile boy to a grown, cold man. There were rumors that as a result of the extinction of the fruits of miraculous power, the empire might collapse. So, it was necessary to take care of the birth of the future generation for the transfer of power in order to calm the people. The servants whispered to each other, as they knew that the young lady was already on the way, the candidate chosen as crown princess. They knew that she was the only survivor of royal blood. As they whispered, the crown prince approached them. They became frightened and began to beg for forgiveness because they had neglected their authority and unknowingly loosened their tongues. The young man was angry with them and said that they could only return when they stopped talking. He left them, and in pursuit, they sincerely begged him for forgiveness. He knew that he was constantly being insulted and talked about behind his back. Everyone said that he did not shed a single tear during his entire reign, and his nature made the blood flow in the veins of other people. People did not understand how such a person could rule an empire. The gray-haired man looked at the bird, which was in a cage, and admired its capabilities, since the bird could freely change the size of its body. A young man came into his room and said that the crown prince was heading towards them. He said that the young man was heading towards them to greet them. The man hoped that the young lady would not run out of the room in tears after meeting the prince. He wanted everything to go well and without any problems. The girl approached the bird and greeted it. She couldn't believe that they could lock such a little thing in a cage. She believed that people were very mean. The girl knew that it was not her plan for the prince to come to her. She decided to free her. The man met the prince and said that he admired the bird because she was truly amazing and could change the size of her body. He assured him that in other countries, such birds are considered sacred. The prince looked at him and said that he hoped that he would not have any further problems because of the bird. The man assured him that the prince would not have any problems with the bird and said that it was in the room. The man began to look for the keys, but, unfortunately, could not find them. The prince heard the sound of wings. Entering the room, he saw a young lady next to a giant bird. He was surprised and confused for a moment. The girl pressed herself close to the bird and said that she was in a bit of a hurry and asked the bird to fly away faster. She wanted to quickly leave the imperial palace. The prince was shocked by everything that was happening. He realized that the young lady wanted to run away from him, but he knew he couldn't let her escape. The prince ran to the girl and grabbed her leg. The prince managed to grab the young lady before she almost flew away and threw her to the floor. He did not understand how she managed to get inside and remain unnoticed, and also touch things that belonged to the imperial family. The prince leaned closer to her and asked if she understood what she had done. The girl could not answer anything and only looked intently at the prince. Even in her distant childhood, the young girl's mother disappeared, and she did not remember her face at all. Her father raised the girl alone. Although it was difficult, they managed. The heavy burden of the young girl's life began after her father died. She came to the man and asked for money for her father's funeral. He looked at her with contempt and said that he had already suffered great damage because of her father. He told her to be grateful that he wasn't asking her to pay all the damages. As a result, she had to leave her homeland in search of a better life. For a girl, such an act was very difficult, but she could not do otherwise. She survived as best she could, working as a maid in one of the noble houses. One day, the man said that she no longer had to do such dirty work, since she will become his adopted daughter and lady of the archducal house. The girl thought she was lucky to be adopted. She hoped that she could be happy again. People whispered behind her back and said that she looked very much like the deceased mistress. But they did not understand why the man adopted a commoner. They were sure that he had no self-esteem at all. Until now, the girl lived to play the role of archduchess. But now she had to devote her life entirely to the crown prince. She knew she had to do it, but her heart was heavy. She understood everything perfectly well, but did not expect that she would be tied up and taken to the crown prince like a sack of potatoes. It was difficult for her. She furiously wanted to live the way she wanted. She was told that she was the last noblewoman left in the empire. She knew that they wanted to marry her by any means. But the girl could not allow this to happen, and decided that in every possible way she would create reasons why they would not want to marry her. The prince frantically wanted to find out from the girl who she was. This situation was unpleasant for him. He wanted to sort everything out as quickly as possible. He was surprised by the behavior of the young lady. While the young prince was looking at the stranger, a huge bird tried to fly away, and she succeeded. She flew away with a few flaps of her wings through the window. Everyone looked after the flying bird. The young lady looked at the prince, and his single glance became scary. The prince looked closely at the girl and said that she was an unusual petty thief and that he had seen her for the first time. The young girl decided to take advantage of the situation and frantically screamed for him to arrest her. She looked at him and said that she dared to touch things that belonged to the imperial family and thereby committed a serious crime. Therefore, it will be difficult for the prince to marry such a girl. The prince looked at her and asked who told her to do this to the bird. The young girl hurriedly got up from the floor and said that she had done such an act out of her own free will. She knew it was better to go to prison than marry him. The prince approached her and asked that she had willingly done such a thing in order to avoid an engagement to him. The young girl began to get nervous. He came quite close to her and said that he was really interested, since until now, everyone only wanted power, and she apparently did not need high status. He leaned even closer to her and said that an interesting thought had come to his mind, since in an amicable way, he had to punish the young girl accordingly. But he had another way that would be the best solution for her. The young girl could not tolerate such closeness. She did not understand why everything was happening to her. The girl broke free from the power of her prince and wanted to run away. The young prince shouted for the guards to grab the girl. The young girl looked at the prince with frightened eyes. She did not understand why everything turned out this way. She was grabbed by the guards. She didn't understand what was happening and what they were going to do. The girl screamed at them. She wanted and demanded that they let her go. The young prince looked at the girl with contempt and said that he would visit her later. The prince believed that torture and pain would help her understand what she had done. The young lady looked at the prince with frightened eyes and did not understand how this could be done. The girl was locked in a dungeon. She screamed heart-rendingly and did not understand how he could lock her in a dungeon and try to intimidate her. She thought he had a terrible character. She thought she would be lashed a couple of times and kicked out. The young girl remembered the prince's eyes and did not understand why he would come to her. She thought it would be better if he beat her with a whip and drove her out. She was alone in the dungeon, and because of this, trembling ran through her. But suddenly she heard a sound, and she became incredibly scared. She thought that it was better for her to sit in the dungeon alone than to be alone with him, her cell. The girl began to drink heavily. The man looked at her and apologized for scaring her. He didn't want to scare her. He looked at her and apologized for their meeting happening that way. He looked at her and asked if he thought she was Ravenna. So he was looking for Ravenna. A servant came running to the prince. He was terrified and shouted that something bad had happened. The prince did not want to listen to his screams and told him not to shout, but to get straight to the point. The servant said that Lady Ravenna had disappeared from the dungeon. The prince was shocked by this news, because I was sure that this simply could not happen. The young girl stood and looked at the man in confusion. She didn't understand why he helped her, but after their conversation, she realized that he was the second prince. The prince smiled at her and said that she could call him Tatio. Tatio Jana Regnator was the second prince of Lacrima. The young girl was scared, looked at Prince Tatio, and asked if she could go out whenever she wanted. The prince looked at her and said that she need not worry about such a thing, since His Majesty had forgiven her crime. Young Ravenna didn't understand what it meant to say that he asked her. The prince looked at her and said that she could still become crown princess. The girl was shocked by what she heard. She never expected that after this, she would be able to marry him. She didn't want this. The girl wanted to get out of the castle as quickly as possible. The young lady did not understand why the prince changed his mind. She said that after all, touching the things of the imperial family is an incredibly serious crime. Prince Tatio looked at her and said with a smile that of course she had committed a great sin, but for the first time the crown prince became interested in the girl. The young girl did not understand what kind of interest we were talking about. Ravenna understood that now she could not avoid her engagement to the prince. After their short conversation, the prince asked if he understood her correctly that she did not want to get married. Ravenna realized that she had shown her dislike for the crown prince too openly. Tatio looked at her and said that usually young ladies were annoyed by the fact that they could not obtain the status of crown princess. Tatio looked at Ravenna and said that the rumors about her were true, namely that she was not an ordinary person. Ravenna looked at him and said that she wanted to ask him something. The prince was surprised, but he was interested to know what she wanted to ask him. Ravenna looked at the prince and asked why he brought her here. He looked at her puzzled, but a moment later he looked at her with a smile and said that he would tell her everything, only on one condition, if everything remained between them. Prince Tatio said with a smile that it was an imperial order, and she only has one chance to avoid marrying the crown prince. Ravenna was surprised and perplexed. Prince Tatio said that she just needs to receive the crown prince's tears, and then all her wishes will come true. Ravenna was terrified. She didn't understand why she had to do this. The prince said that if she managed to get his tears, then her marriage would be immediately dissolved, and the emperor will promptly thank her generously. Prince Tatito said that the entire conversation should remain secret, and the crown prince should not know about anything, since he could immediately kick her out or worse. The girl decided to protest, but the prince said that she didn't have much of a choice. She can only get married or get tears. Young Ravenna did not understand how she could obtain the tears of such an insensitive and cold-blooded person. She felt uneasy and very scared. The prince looked at her and said that he understood her feelings perfectly. He knew that she considered this situation unfair. He left her no choice, and it was difficult for her to make a decision. He looked at her and asked what she would do if he helped her. The crown prince ran to their room with lightning speed. He was angry. The young man flew into the room and saw the girl with Tatio. Prince Tatio looked at the crown prince with a grin and said that he was late. The young man hurriedly approached Ravenna and asked his brother why the young lady was in such a place and not in prison. Frightened, Ravenna looked at the crown prince and said that she was not a princess, so she would no longer sit in prison. The crown prince was surprised by this statement. Tatio looked at the young man and said that the girl was telling the truth, since the emperor himself had forgiven the girl for her mistake. Tatio, with a grin on his face, said that in the future the girl could become his bride. So he has every reason to communicate with her. Ravenna looked at the young people and realized that the atmosphere around them was not the most prosperous. She noticed that the boys did not get along. The crown prince looked at the girl with contempt and said that he understood that she wanted to be treated politely. The girl said that she didn't care, she just wanted to come back. The young man looked at her and said that in that case, their conversation would go well. When leaving, the crown prince said that from tomorrow she will begin to regret that she did not stay in prison. Finally, he looked at her with contempt, and he said that she would regret everything. The young man's words sent the girl into hysterics. She was furiously angry and thought that there was no way she would marry him. Even if she was threatened with death, she still would not marry him. Taddeo looked at the girl and asked if she had any desire to accept his proposal. The girl screamed heart-rendingly and without hesitation asked him for help. He was surprised that she answered without even a second of thought. The prince laughed at her and said that she was indeed an interesting person. After what he saw, the prince approached the young lady, kissed her hand, and said that he understood why his brother chose her as his wife. Prince Tatio said with a grin that he would not help her easily. He said that if the girl fulfilled his conditions, she would be able to gain many allies in the palace. Prince Tatio looked at the young girl and said that it would be good if the girl could make the prince cry and report frequently on the progress of the task. He assured her that they would be fine regardless of the contents of the report. The young lady was frightened and did not know whether everything would really happen as he said. The prince assured the girl that such an offer was very beneficial for her. The girl looked at him and timidly asked if perhaps her task was due to the fact that the relationship between the crown prince and his majesty was not very good. Prince Tatio looked at the frightened girl and said that he would not deny, since relations between men were strained to the extreme, but he thought that they should not talk about such things. Tatio said, with a smile on his face, that if she was very interested, then she needed to listen to him very carefully, since fragments with his participation would often flash during the story. The young Ice reviewed the information. She was determined and wanted to begin the task immediately. Tatio looked at the young beauty and said that in such a situation, the saying that seeing once is worth hearing 7 times is very suitable. He said that it was best for her to personally find out about the crown prince. Ravenna told Tatio that she brought the notes she could find, but in reality there weren't that many notes. She expected there to be more. Ravenna sat and read information about the crown prince. It was written in the scrolls that no matter how much suffering the prince faced, and even if he saw someone who was about to die, the prince never cried. Therefore, in order to bring tears to the prince, His Majesty took some measures. In the books that were read to the prince, the ending was always tragic, but, unfortunately, this did not bring any effect, and it was all in vain. The prince was not allowed to blink at all for 5 minutes. The girl thought that it seemed that His Majesty had tried a lot of methods, and this one probably looked a little funny. But what surprised the girl further was that they decided to try giving her very spicy food that normal people and even adults could not eat. In addition, he was tickled for almost an hour and then very frightened. They even forced me to yawn, but all the tortures failed. Reading all the information, the young girl was horrified by the fact that the prince was an impenetrable person. Ravenna thought that it seemed that she had been given simply impossible tasks. She didn't understand how she could make him cry. The girl thought that by reading the book, she would find fresh notes about the prince. But when she looked closer at the book, she saw that the page had been torn out. She realized that there were no more notes, except for those that she found, and after that, the thought came to her that it was necessary to ask other people about the prince. The young girl shouted to the young people because she wanted to ask them what worried her. But I heard that they were discussing a candidate for the role of crown princess, who had recently arrived at the castle. They said that the girl had an unusual eye color and it was creepy, and she looked rather strange. They thought it was better to lock her behind bars than to let her just walk around the palace. The young people said that she was a commoner and was born half monster and half human. They believed that it was because of this that she was able to attract the attention of the crown prince, because they were sure that she was using her strange power on him. Ravenna approached the young people, who were furiously discussing her. One of the girls asked with a smile if Ravenna needed help. Ravenna waved it off and said that she was fine, just something was bothering her. The young girl did not understand what exactly was bothering Ravenna. She looked at her and said that what they said bothered her, namely that she had some kind of strange power. Ravenna looked at them with contempt and said that she had heard their entire conversation and of course did not know that she had any power. She no longer intended to listen to them and decided to immediately leave their company. The young people were frightened and hastily began to make excuses. They said that they had no intention of insulting her, but the young lady had no intention of listening to them or arguing with them. She was in the wrong position. She left them. Many people had the wrong opinion about her, and she was constantly surrounded by other people's views. But, despite this, the girl always bravely fought back and returned everything with interest. In order to survive among the nobles who did not want to accept her, she always did this, and eventually it became her habitual way of life. The girl was walking along the corridor. She knew that if she had power, then no one would dare to humiliate her further, but due to the fact that she did not have such power, sometimes she was even ashamed to raise her eyes from the fear. The girl didn't look at all where she was going while she was flying in her thoughts. She lowered her eyes and muttered to herself. She did not notice how she accidentally collided with the young man. Her book fell, and she asked for forgiveness. But when she looked up, she saw the prince. She knew that even if she apologized to him, her situation would not change. He looked at her and said that her facial expression looked so rude. The prince realized where she went in broad daylight and asked her if she often read books. The prince stepped on the book. The girl was shocked by this behavior of the young man. She said it was the first time she had ever seen a person step on a book. She looked at him and said that she should leave him, since she is not the person who can talk to him directly. She wanted him not to ask anything more and to leave quickly. The young prince averted his eyes to the side and did not look at the girl. He said she seemed to like to act like a rat. She knew that no matter what activity he found her doing, he always said exactly that. Sometimes such words really irritated her, but now she knew that she needed to say thank you for it. The young prince looked at her and asked why she was alone in such a place. He wondered where her servants were. The girl said that she was more comfortable being alone, and he shouldn't worry about her so much. The prince came closer to her and said with a grin that since she likes to walk alone, because she looks like other people ignore her. The girl hesitated a little, but said that everything was not like that at all, and she added that it seemed that His Highness was worried about her. The prince prepared to leave the young lady, and finally said that he did not think that she was so brave as to quarrel with the imperial family. Finally, he told her that while she was wandering around all alone, she needed to be very careful. The girl was shocked that he decided to detain her just to say such words. She realized that he thought that she was lonely. Because of this, he decided to take care of her. The young girl knew she couldn't just let him go like that. She knew this was her chance. Ravenna pulled him by the sleeve, asking for forgiveness and asking why he doesn't take a break tomorrow and rest. The prince was at a loss. The girl said that he constantly sits at work, and this is wrong. She looked at him and asked if he himself was not tired of this, since it must be very tiring. She looked at him and said there was one play she would like to see. Ravenna fiercely wished that he would agree, and they went together. He looked at her and said through gritted teeth that she didn't seem to understand the difficult situation he was in right now. The girl said with a smile that no matter how unlucky he was with his surroundings, he needed to take a better look at the people around him, and perhaps he will be able to notice that many wish him well. He didn't understand why he had to go with her and why she chose him. The girl said with a smile that if he did not give her a promise, she would not let him go. The prince pulled his hand away, and the frightened girl said that using force against her was dishonest. The prince was in a hurry. He wanted to quickly leave her company. The girl shouted after him that they could go to the play the day after tomorrow. She shouted that they must definitely go there together. She didn't know if he heard her. She knew that she had no intention of remaining as others wanted her to be, since she believed that this would hardly make things better. Ravenna knew that the crown prince's weakness was definitely written on that torn piece of paper. The girl knew that if she continued in the same spirit, someday she would definitely win the prince over and find a way to make him cry. It was very light, and the prince did not want to wake up. He desperately wanted to rest a little longer and not see anyone. The prince wrapped himself under the blanket and lay down further. A young girl burst into the prince's room. After her, the maid told her to calm down and wait until the prince himself woke up and came to her. But the girl was serious, and she wanted to wake him up herself, since it was already morning, and she believed that it was time to wake up. Since a lot of time has passed. She asked the maid not to disturb her. The young girl approached the prince and began to wake him up. The young prince was shocked by the girl's behavior. He did not expect that she would come to him on her own. He didn't want to see anyone. Young Ravenna only asked if he remembered the promise he made to her last time. He looked sideways at her, and the girl told him not to glare at her with such a dissatisfied look. She looked at him and said that she would not leave him until he got up, and asked him if he had bought a ticket. The prince was uncomfortable in her presence, and even more so, he did not want to go anywhere. The prince reluctantly rose from the bed and asked her if she was ashamed to appear in such an outfit in front of a man. The girl was surprised, because she knew that he was not interested in her as a woman, so she knew that everything was in order. She looked at him and said with a grin that he was probably thinking something obscene. Ravenna asked him if he was not ashamed to think about such things. He looked sideways at her. The girl still irritated him a little, but he didn't say anything. Ravenna said that they should go to the play, since it is the most wonderful drama, which is famous throughout the empire. Ravenna said with a smile that she thought the prince would be able to laugh heartily at the comical moments, or cry to tears at the sad prices of the production. The prince and Ravenna got ready and rode in a carriage to the play. She told the prince that he would definitely like the play, since the best prima donna in the empire was playing there, namely Cassia Salas. The prince looked in bewilderment and said that this was the first time he had heard such a name. The girl was shocked, since everyone knew the young diva. The beautiful voice, exciting acting, and bewitching attractive appearance of the prima donna could amaze at first sight. The girl assured that if you just look at the acting of a prima donna, you can become dependent on her, and after what you see, you want to see the prima donna again and again every day. She seemed to hypnotize with her skill. Ravenna said with admiration that even aristocrats say that it is difficult to snag at least one extra ticket to a performance with the participation of a prima donna. So, it's a great honor to be able to get to see a play in which she plays. The prince looked at the girl indignantly and said that he was not at all interested in who she was. The young lady looked at him and said that at first everyone says that, but when they see her play with their own eyes, they immediately change their minds. Princip looked at her and said that he could see from her reaction that she did not want to show him the play, but rather wanted to get there herself and look at the prima donna. Ravenna was shocked by his words and said that he should not think so badly of people since she was trying to get to the play for his sake. The prince looked at the young lady and said that she could go to the play herself. He didn't understand why she took him with her. Ravenna almost exploded with anger. She said that he has neither antipathy nor sympathy for other people. The girl asked the prince if there was anything or someone he liked at all. The prince looked at her and quickly looked away. He didn't understand why she was asking this, because he knew that such a question did not relate to their current conversation. The girl hesitated and said that she expected such an answer. She was sure that the prince's life was so boring that he even avoided answering questions. He looked at her and said that she really knows how and can really touch a person to the quick. Ravenna didn't understand why he didn't want to talk about it. She said that they would likely be together for a long time, so she thought it would be right to get to know each other better. After all, without this, it will be quite difficult to build normal relationships. The girl believed that the easiest way to get closer was to find common ground, in the form of common interests. She wanted him to be more open with her, as well as with other people, and communicate about different topics. She sincerely wanted to find out what the prince liked in order to become closer to him and begin to understand him better. Coming out of the carriage, she smiled at him and told him to look at how amazing the weather is at this time of year. The prince looked at the young lady with bewilderment. He didn't want to get close to her at all. The prince knew what the consequences could be if he got close to anyone. The gentleman met them and with all politeness asked them to follow him, when suddenly, unexpectedly for everyone, they heard an incomprehensible cry of a young lady. Ravenna looked at the girl and was surprised. It was just a harmless little child. The young girl looked tearfully at the paper gentleman and asked if they had come to meet the diva. The man looked at the girl and said that she was behaving very rudely, since a low-born child did not dare to talk to them like that. Ravenna interrupted him and said that everything was fine. Ravenna approached the young girl and asked what she wanted. Ravenna wanted to help the young lady, since she had once been in her place. Ravenna something if she would allow it, since she really admires the diva and thought it would be great if she could watch the performance just like them. The way she performs on the big stage and shines, getting used to her role, but unfortunately she is unlikely to be able to watch it, since she couldn't afford the tickets. But she really wanted to see her. The girl knew that since she couldn't see her, she would like to give her flowers, and through them she asked for help. The man looked at the little girl puzzled and said that he understood what she wanted to see. However, he didn't think that such high-ranking guests would be tempted to accept such a stupid request. Ravenna looked at the little girl and asked if she really should just give the flowers to the diva. The girl was very glad that the young lady agreed to fulfill her request. Ravenna looked at her and asked if the little girl had any other requests. The man stood in shock at what was happening. The young girl looked at the mistress and said that if she really helped fulfill another request, then she would be very happy. And she asked her to tell the prima donna that when she grows up, she will become like her, since she really wanted to be like a prima donna and become a famous singer. The man, smiling, told Ravenna that she had a very big heart, since she decided to accept the request of such a child. The prince looked and said that the girl had a small heart, she was just a little stupid. The prince looked at Ravenna and asked if this girl was a resident of the empire. Ravenna looked at him and said that he understood everything correctly, and this child is a foreigner, just like the diva herself. Ravenna said that changing the opinion of foreigners is one of the things that Cassia managed to achieve. She hesitated and said that, most likely, this was the reason why the girl fell in love with the prima donna. Ravenna said, with a smile, that the prince seemed to be very interested in the girl. The girl apologized to the prince and said that she would have to leave him for a while so that she could give the prima donna flowers and convey the girl's words. The prince only asked how far their places were, since he was already very tired and wanted to sit down. Ravenna said that she envied even herself that she could accompany him to such a play. She believed that such an event simply couldn't help but make her happy. The prince said in a tired voice that she was tiring him even more, and if there were seats for only one person, and they were at a distance from the other seats, then he would immediately take first place. While they were having a casual conversation, a young man was watching them. The man approached his accomplice and told him to repeat their plan again. He wanted to start implementing the plan and check everything without unnecessary noise. He knew that if an obstacle suddenly appeared, he would need to get rid of it immediately on the spot. While the men were whispering on the sidelines and plotting something bad, Ravenna and the prince were having a casual conversation. Ravenna and the prince arrived at their places. The girl was very happy and admired the beauty of the hall. She had never seen so many people. It seemed to her that they all came with their lovers. The prince looked at her and realized that she was rejoicing like a little child. He looked at her and didn't understand how she could think like that. He was puzzled that a girl from a noble family could be so modest. Ravenna looked at him and said that she would go to Kazuya for a while and asked where he would sit. He didn't answer her. The girl said that she should know where he would be, since he could simply run away, because he is annoyed by being in such a place. He looked at her with contempt and told her to keep her thoughts to herself. Ravenna, without thinking twice, decided that she could solve the problem with his whereabouts very simply. She came up and tied the prince's hand and the chair with ribbon. The prince was surprised, but did not say anything. Ravenna tied the hand and tied the ribbon into a bow. She looked at the prince and said that now she could be calm, that he would not run away anywhere. Ravenna took the bouquet and headed towards the door. She said that she was already leaving, and he could untie the knot before she arrived. The prince looked after her and realized that she was completely stupid. Ravenna knocked on the diva's door and waited for her answer. She was very nervous because it was the first time she had to meet her in person. Ravenna stood and thought about the prima donna. She wondered what she was like when she came off stage, kind and sweet, or maybe she was cold and arrogant. One way or another, she knew that she would still be glad to see them for the first time. Ravenna didn't know how to greet her properly, but she knew she needed to make a good first impression. In fact, she really wanted to see her quickly. Ravenna waited a very long time for the prima donna to come out. She thought that she was most likely out of place and hoped that she would return soon. But she knew that the whole situation was a little strange, since the performance was about to start. She was worried whether everything would be okay if the main singer was not in place. But when the young woman specifically asked the woman how she could get to the prima donna, she was told that she should definitely be there. Ravenna wondered what happened and where Cassia was. She thought that maybe she had already gone on stage. Ravenna knew she couldn't just stand still, as she really wanted to see her. The young lady decided not to waste time and decided to look around. She thought that if they didn't meet now, nothing bad would happen. She could find her later. Walking along the corridor, the girl noticed that the corridor was very dark. She thought it might be because of the performance, but later she saw the usher. The usher, in fact, was the administrator of the theater, and his duties included, among other things, accompaniment to the place. He walked along the corridor and continuously looked around. Ravenna went for the theater administrator because she wanted to find out where the prima donna was. But the girl did not expect to see something like this. She saw the kidnapping taking place. The team of kidnappers were shocked that they had been discovered. Cassia screamed furiously and broke free from the man's embrace. Ravenna, she was in shock. She didn't understand what was happening. Without thinking twice, Ravenna decided to immediately run away. The theater director frantically shouted and gave orders to catch the young runaway. Ravenna was running and didn't understand what was happening, but she knew that now was not the right time to think about it. Ravenna ran, screamed furiously, and asked for help. She was looking for someone to help her. When she offended, she collided with a man. She screamed for him to help her because Cassia had been kidnapped. The man decided not to waste time and quickly covered her mouth with a towel. He said that if she were one of the noble ladies, she would have sat silent in the theater. And with her behavior, she only complicated everything. He said that he was very sorry, but no one would help her anymore. The prince sat in the hall and waited for his companion. He knew that the girl was already late. He sat and wondered what I would do if he was called. He knew that most likely the girl would miss the beginning of the performance. The curtain opened and everyone started whispering because they didn't understand what was happening. The people in the audience knew that this was not how the show should begin. The prince sat and realized that he was not feeling well. He looked at the knot and did not dare to untie it, but a moment later he was still able to untie it, since it was in his way. The young ladies came to the man and said that they had searched the entire dressing room, but did not find the diva. As if she had disappeared, the man did not understand how this could happen, because the performance was very important, and even the emperor's family came. The man wanted to retire, but he didn't understand how the ladies could set him up like that. He knew he shouldn't have allowed strangers into the theater. While the man was screaming, the prince came up from behind and asked him if he really understood that the actress was missing. The prince looked at the gathered people and said that by coincidence, another woman had disappeared. He looked at them and asked if they had seen a girl from the same family with whom he came. Their conversation was interrupted by a man who ran up to them. He was out of breath and said that in the corridor at the back door, he found a bouquet of flowers. The men were shocked. The man looked at the young man who came running with flowers and asked him what he was doing at the back door. The prince thought about everything. He knew that the young lady had been wanting to leave him for a long time and was waiting for the right moment. But he couldn't allow that. He knew the situation was very suspicious. The prince looked at the men and said that he had no intention of getting involved in this, but if the aristocracy is involved, then that changes everything. The prince told the man to close the theater and bring him the register, since he wanted to deal with this difficult matter himself. The people who were initially present at the performance were very angry. Since the organizers did not raise the curtain for a long time, and later completely closed the doors and did not intend to let them go when they wanted to go home. They screamed heart-rendingly and demanded to be released. People screamed heart-rendingly and wanted to find out which of those present was the main organizer, because they wanted to quickly deal with him. They wanted to know what the reason was and why they were being detained for so long. The organizer sat next to the prince and was heart-rending with fear. The prince, in turn, sat calmly next to him. The organizer looked at the prince with frightened eyes and said that in this situation, he is the most important. The prince, with a calm expression that did not express any emotions, quietly said that he would now quickly calm and pacify everyone. The prince sat thinking and did not understand how such a situation could even happen. He checked the register, but all the people recorded were in the building, and he was also told that they had not seen anyone leaving the theater. He thought that the diva might just go out somewhere, but he was tormented by doubts about his companion. He did not understand where she could dress. A representative man approached the prince and the organizer and said that the aristocrats with a busy schedule did not spare precious time to come to the theater. He told the prince with a grin that it was rude of him to treat them like that. The man said that at a minimum, they should ask Cassia to come out to them and explain the whole situation to the audience. He believed that in this way, the current situation could be quickly resolved. The man drank heart-rendingly and wanted the girl to immediately come out and explain the whole situation. He shouted that he would not take a single step and would not leave until she came out and explained herself. The prince looked at the young man and asked who the man was. The young man said that it was Count Lopez. The man said that the Count is a regular visitor to the theater, and in some way he is Cassia's sponsor, and the Count even gave money to expand the theater. The prince was surprised after hearing that they were expanding the theater. The man looked at him and said that they had recently purchased the building next door and were now ready to expand the theater. After hearing this, the prince asked the young man if it was possible to enter that building without leaving where they were. The young man looked at the prince in fear and said that there was one passage that led there. The organizer looked at the prince and said that without his further settlement, the situation could get out of control, because right now, all the visitors were waiting for an explanation. The prince agreed with the man, but said that it would be a good idea to find the missing actress first. The prince said that he would do this immediately. In return, he wanted to take some of their people with him. The organizer was shocked by everything that was happening. The prince looked at him and said that he would now point to the young people, and they should immediately follow him to the building next door. He knew that the building next door was a very good place to hide someone or something. Naturally, only for a person who is well versed in the building and knows all the exits and entrances. The prince assumed that the man who was presented as the sponsor of the missing actress could easily try to kidnap her. He knew that something was wrong in this situation and wanted to independently check all his guesses. The man was furious. He didn't understand what was so difficult about stealing just one woman without witnesses. His accomplice made excuses as best he could, because he didn't know that if he kidnapped a girl, someone would look for her. He didn't know what to do now or what to do. The man in the cap looked at his accomplice and said that they could not get the money if they did not hand over the woman. The man ordered his accomplices to take care of the original plan, and he would take care of the rest himself. The man looked with contempt at the young lady who was trying to get up. He asked her if she really thought that her intervention would change the situation. She screamed heart-rendingly because she did not want him to come close to her and cause harm. The man looked at her and said that he thought it would be better if they did not cross each other at all. He didn't understand why she came to them alone if she couldn't do anything. The man presented a knife to the young lady's throat. Ravenna got scared and retreated. He looked at her and said that it was still good to have a weapon with you. He said that not only does it shimmer beautifully, but it can also shut up overly talkative erotica like her. Ravenna was not going to listen to his chatter. She was interested in what they were going to do with Cassia. The man was surprised because she was in such a difficult situation to worry about others. He asked her with a grin if it was by chance or if she was not Mother Teresa. He said that he would give her the answer to the question, since she would die soon anyway. The man said that the Count ordered them to kidnap her because he wanted revenge. The man said that it was all because he continued to propose marriage to her, but he was constantly refused, and in the end, he decided to kidnap her from the stage so that the theater itself would suffer greater losses. After such a difficult situation, the theater may go bankrupt. The Count hoped that after everything Cassia would run to him with her tail between her legs, and thereby expose yourself as a corrupt woman. The man said that if everything goes as the Count planned, then the actress's career will end there. Even if she tells the truth, no one will believe her, and in the eyes of the aristocracy, she is no more than a stranger or a clown entertaining them. Ravenna didn't understand how they could even do this. She believed that after this they were worse than animals. The man said that he believed that he would be worse than a beast. There was nothing wrong with that. Since he would be paid money for his work, he knew that he would have his job and be whatever he wanted. He asked her with a smirk if she shouldn't have worried better about herself, since he was already beginning to be annoyed by her excessive playing at Mother Teresa. The man initially did not plan to kill anyone, but in such a situation, he will have to. See, the Count must under no circumstances find out that a witness has appeared. The man said that he would try to do everything to make it less painful for her, but only if she did not resist. The girl didn't know what to do, but, unfortunately, she had no choice. She needed to do at least something. She believed that it was better to try than to remain inactive. She hit the man, knocking him to the floor. Ravenna turned around and realized that she had to run. The man was sitting on the floor, screaming and swearing at the girl. Ravenna turned to him and told him that she was not going to do anything that criminals like him would say. Ravenna rushed to the door. She knew that she needed to run and escape from such a place. But, unfortunately, her escape was not successful. The man quickly realized that he couldn't let her run away so easily. He shouted with rage that in the end no one would come to save her. He looked at her and told her to stop getting on his nerves. The man was holding the young lady by the hair when he suddenly heard a noise. The young lady was at a loss. She didn't know if she was really hearing his voice. Ravenna started screaming. She wanted to attract attention, but the man quickly came to his senses as he understood her intentions. He covered her mouth with his hand and pulled her to the side. The prince heard the girl scream and rushed into the room like a whirlwind. But when he went into the room, he saw that it was empty. But he was tormented by doubts. He felt that something very suspicious was happening in the room. Cassia screamed furiously because she knew that she had done nothing wrong and everything was unfair to her. She screamed at the people, pointed at her captor, and screamed that they were the ones who kidnapped her. The kidnappers were nervous and said that they themselves had just found her and stopped her while trying to escape. They shouted in front of the prince that they had no reason to steal her. They fought back and shouted that the prince himself witnessed how they helped her. But the girl did not believe them and shouted that someone had hired them. She was sure that they wanted to kidnap her and then sell her into slavery or something worse. The kidnappers nervously screamed and asked the prince to listen to them, and to believe them, they claimed that the girl was lying. The men stood nervously and watched the altercation from the sidelines. They whispered and didn't know who to trust. One of the men argued that the girl could not lie about such things, and the other argued that she, as the diva of the theater, could easily play the role of the victim and lie to them. Cassia was furious and told them to explain to her why they were lying to her and said that she was not dragged into such a building alone. Cassia wanted to know what they did to the girl who had the flowers in her hands. The theater employee became very nervous. The employee said that they did not know at all what she was talking about. The prince saw a ribbon on the ground. He walked up to it, sat down and picked it up, and asked if they really didn't know what they were talking about. He pointed to the tape he found and asked what it was doing there. The man sat with Ravenna in the closet, wrapping his arms around her and holding her hostage. She wanted to escape as quickly as possible, but he presented a knife to her throat and said that if they were found now, then she should not even allow the thought that he would simply let her go. The man said that the second they were found, he would cut her throat. He looked at her and said with a grin that if she tried to make just one sound, she would immediately make sure that he was not bluffing. Ravenna clearly felt how much her body was trembling with fear. She did not want to die. She was very scared. She furiously wanted Prince Link to look into the closet at least once, because she was very close. In her thoughts, she frantically asked him to look in the closet. The kidnappers looked at each other and said that they did not know what Cassia was talking about. Since this was the first time they had heard about the girl, Cassia was furious. She shouted that the people in front of them were lying to the prince's eyes. The men stood near her and whispered. They did not understand how she could talk like that. One of the men said that they had no way to check who was lying and who was not. The prince sat and thought about the whole situation. They asked him what to do, since the girl was not there, and she was not even in the other rooms. The men suggested that he return to the main publication of the theater. The prince, after thinking a little, said that in this case, they could not do anything, and they needed to return to the main building. The kidnapper in the closet was very happy when he heard the prince's words. Ravenna was shocked. She didn't understand why he would just up and leave without even really checking the room and the closet, because he was even able to find the tape, but he couldn't look at the room well. Ravenna did not understand what was happening and what he would do next. She did not rule out the possibility that he simply decided to wag his tongue. She didn't understand why it was so difficult for him to check the closet in the room. She heard footsteps moving away. Ravenna couldn't understand how he could just leave. The girl was furious. She couldn't understand why he didn't check the closet, because it wasn't that difficult for him. Mentally, she begged him not to leave. The girl accepted her fate and thought that if she died, she would come to him in his dreams and torture him to death. As he left, the prince felt a chill on his back. He instantly ran to the closet, opened it, and saw the kidnapper with his companion. The prince hit the kidnapper and he fell. He looked at the girl and said that he knew that she was in the closet. The girl did not understand how he could find out. She looked at him with frightened eyes. The prince looked at her and said that everything was quite obvious. Because if you want to hide, the best place to hide is a closet. He looked at her and asked if it was true that she thought that he would not save her and leave her alone. He said that she took him and dragged him to the theater and then ran away to take flowers and disappeared, while he agreed to take a break to go outside with someone other than security. He was very worried about her. Ravenna hit the prince with a flourish. Everyone in the room began to look at each other and whisper. They did not understand why she hit her savior. The prince was perplexed and only asked what she was doing. The girl said that she was very scared because she was afraid that he would not find her. She thought that after that, he would simply give up and decide to leave. He looked at her in bewilderment and asked if she was crying. The girl was furious and said that now it is not so important. She asked him to untie her quickly. The prince was shocked by the situation. He recalled the words of his mother, who said that he needed to completely forget about his feelings. The prince looked at the girl and said that she was trembling all over, but pretending to be cool, and he was unpleasant when she cried. He hugged her tighter and told her not to cry in front of him anymore. Ravenna grinned. She didn't understand how he dared say such a thing to a man who almost died. She wanted to thank him, but after his words and actions, she completely lost the desire. The prince looked in bewilderment at the men who were looking at him and his companion, and told them not to stand there in vain, but to grab that man in the closet and tie him up. After the truth was revealed, everyone was captured and the criminals were tied up. Having combined all the testimony, we were able to immediately find the count who ordered all this to be done. After which he was also captured and punished, And the most important thing was to find out that the original plan was not to capture Cassia, but his name was Revenge. Ravenna approached Cassia and asked her forgiveness, since she did not want it to turn out like this. She brought her flowers and said that one girl really wanted to give them to her. The girl looked at Cassia and said that the girl liked her very much, and she would like Ravenna to give the flowers. The count was punished, but Cassia did not even demand compensation for the stress she experienced. Cassia was touched to the depths of her soul, since the young girl was not just looking for her, she just wanted to convey something so touching. After Cassia listened to everything and took the flowers, she burst into tears. Ravenna was speechless and could not say another word, although she had many questions as a prima donna. A man ran into the mistress's chambers. He was excited and frightened. He said that he heard everything that happened to her and asked if she was okay. The girl looked at him and said that everything was fine with her and there was no need to worry about her so much since she was completely fine. The man looked at her and saw a cut on her neck. He was shocked, but the young lady only said that she was really fine, and the wound no longer hurt as much as before. She didn't understand why he fussed so much. Her father came to the young girl. He was shocked by everything. The young lady tried to calm him down. The man took his daughter in his arms and carried him to the prince. He was furious at what had happened. The servants shouted after him to calm down and not be nervous, since the prince might have work and he would not be able to receive him. But he couldn't just leave everything to chance. He needed to find out everything. He especially wanted to know the whole situation from beginning to end. The man burst into the prince's office and shouted that he had an urgent conversation with him. The servant watched all this and did not understand why the archduke, because of a minor injury, made a fuss and burst into the prince himself. The prince was a little puzzled and shocked that when the archduke learned about the injury, he immediately arrived at the imperial palace. The servant said that due to the fact that the lady did not particularly want to explain what had happened, he decided impulsively at that very moment to go to the prince in order to get an explanation from him. The prince was shocked by everything that was happening, but the young lady said that they could discuss everything themselves, and there was no need to involve the prince in the whole story. Gift of Dux Duarte, an archduke with a powerful army and vast territory. The second most powerful man in the empire, known for being a good strategist and also for being a great man who helped his family flourish. But despite this, he has one big flaw, an obsession with excessive care and protection of his adopted daughter. The archduke was shocked that the girl herself did not want to tell everything in detail. He thought that the cut was not a trifle, since his daughter was stolen and then cut. He couldn't leave everything alone. The girl said that the kidnappers had already been dealt with, and they had already been punished enough. The man was furious because they dared to harm his daughter. He knew that it made no difference what he did to them, because they deserved punishment. After everything he had heard, the archduke looked at his daughter and asked the prince if his daughter would be safe if such a thing happened again. The prince turned away and said nothing. The young lady was furiously angry because of the prince's behavior. The archduke said that he understood everything, and most likely he made a mistake when he decided to send his daughter to the palace. The girl was in shock and did not understand what her father would do next. The man said that he just thought that if he came to the imperial palace, he could normally discuss the whole situation and then calmly leave. But nothing worked out for him, and after everything, he has no other choice. He looked at his daughter and said that he no longer wanted her to be with the prince. He looked at her and said that she should no longer be in the castle, and she should leave, since she would no longer be safe in the castle. And he will settle all the formalities regarding the engagement himself. Ravenna was shocked because she knew that she didn't want to get married, but after everything that happened, she doesn't want to leave. The girl said that she did not want to leave and would stay in the castle. She looked at her father and said that he originally sent her to the imperial palace against her will, and now suddenly wants to take her away. She didn't understand how long she would be a toy in the hands of other people who could be pushed around in different directions. She looked at her father and asked him for forgiveness for putting herself in danger, and said that she would be more careful in the future. She asked him to reconsider his decision and agree to leave her in the imperial palace. The archduke looked at the young lady and said that she had not changed and still did not want to accept his help. He looked at her and asked if she could really handle it on her own. The archduke looked at her and said that it would not be easy for her to cope with many things and people in the world alone. because the world does not consist of only good things, and she should have realized this when her life was in danger. He said that she was the daughter of the Archduke, which is why she would have every right to just continue living in safety and comfort, and no one would dare hurt her because he intended to protect her. The Archduke said that he understood her, and in that case he would leave her in the prince's care, and he also asked for forgiveness for being rude to the prince. The man said that in that case he needed to go already, and he left them. The prince and the servant looked after him in shock, and the young lady was perplexed and very upset. The prince looked at the young lady and said that her father was right. Since there was truth in his words, he did not understand why she could not live the rest of her life in luxury and security. He was puzzled that she had so categorically refused her father's proposal. He looked at the girl and asked her if she was unhappy with something, because from her appearance it is immediately clear that she does not want this at all. The prince came closer to the young lady and said that he would give her advice. He said that she needed to listen to herself more often because this way she could develop her intuition better, but she shouldn't have forced herself to stay in the imperial palace because of him. The prince said that he was not attracted to her as a woman, and there was no point in creating illusions. Ravenna looked at him and asked why he even thought he was attractive to her. The young lady said that even if she fell in love with him, she would not make such a decision just because she was in love. She looked at him and said in a rage that even if she wants to leave, she wants to make this decision herself and not follow someone else's opinion. The prince looked at her and said with a smirk that it must have been very difficult for the Archduke to deal with a young lady like her. The prince looked at the young lady and said that since their family squabbles were already over, she could leave his office. Ravenna was furious. She said that even if he had not told her to leave the office, she would have left him herself. The prince knew that from the moment this woman appeared next to him, very strange things did not stop happening to him. Ravenna didn't understand why everyone was telling her what to do. She doesn't even have time to insert it again. The young girl did not understand how to make the prince cry now if she got angry and told him too much and left him. She was at a loss and did not understand what to do. She stood in the garden and thought about everything, when suddenly she heard an incomprehensible sound, and a moment later the girl saw a bird. It was the same bird that she had recently released. Prince Tatio approached her and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He asked what she was doing in the garden, since he was looking for her all the time, and she, it turns out, was here all the time. The girl was surprised that he was looking for her and asked him if he was looking for her because of his anxiety. He said he heard that her family was kidnapped and threatened. He looked at her and said that it was only natural to be worried in such a situation. The girl timidly replied that of course she was very scared, but she did not expect such an unexpected guest to come. The prince was surprised by her answer. The girl said that she was surprised by his arrival, as she did not expect to see him. She looked at the prince and asked where he got this bird from. The prince said that he found the bird lying unconscious near the imperial palace, so he couldn't just leave it there. He took care of the bird for a while, and later he let her go. But today, for some reason, the bird flew to him and was most actively circling around, so he decided to follow the bird, and in the end, it led him to her. The young girl looked at the prince, puzzled. She was shocked by what she heard. The girl said that in that case it was simply delightful, since the bird must have recognized the person who saved it. That's why she circled around him. The prince laughed and said that he thought he should have followed the bird a little earlier. The prince looked at the young lady and said that he actually came just to check if she was okay, but he also had something that he wanted to give her. He asked her to turn away for a couple of minutes and not turn around until he told her. The prince carefully approached the young girl and asked for forgiveness for his rudeness. He put a necklace on her. Rivna was shocked. She didn't understand why he did it. The prince said that he just wanted to give her a gift in honor of the fact that they got along. The young girl was in shock and did not know what to do in such a situation, since she did not know at all who treated her this way before. The girl timidly looked at him and thanked him for such an unexpected gift received. The prince looked at the young lady and said with a smile that such a gem could not be found anywhere else. Although it is not a particularly large jewel or pearl, it has been believed to bring good luck since ancient times and is often used as a guardian stone. The prince said that he would like to give it to her, since he could not always be with her. He really wanted to give it to her and asked her to accept it as a talisman. Tatio looked at her and said that he also hoped that he could help her in the future and would certainly protect him. He said that she would certainly remember him when she looked at the stone. He asked her to always wear it without taking it off, and he would protect her next time. He said that it was very important to him and thanked her for accepting such a gift. The Archduke came to the Emperor and greeted him. The Emperor said that he had been waiting for a long time for the Archduke to deign to come to him. The Archduke asked for forgiveness for such rudeness on his part, since he was very worried about his daughter, so he immediately wanted to check how she was, so that later he could calmly come to him. The Emperor approached the Archduke and said that he would change him a lot, and he knew very well that he loved and worried about his daughter very much. He came closer to the Archduke and said that he did not understand how he could be so attached to her and love her. After all, she is not even his daughter by blood. He was really curious where such a fatherly love for a young girl came from. The Emperor asked the man why he came to him for an audience. The Archduke said that he would like to bring his daughter home. The Emperor said that at the moment this would be very problematic, since thanks to her the imperial palace, which had previously been very quiet, came to life. The Emperor said that when the young girl entered the palace, she turned the inside of the courtyard upside down. He didn't know where in the world he could still find such a bright and active girl. The Emperor looked at him and said with a grin that, of course, it was originally intended that it would be good to end everything here and let the girl go. The Emperor said that she was kidnapped while she was outside, all because she was unaccompanied. And he must understand that he can disgrace the imperial family if he takes it back now, and especially since people already know about everything. The Emperor suggested that the Duke be patient a little longer. Kneeling before the Emperor, the Archduke said that he would follow his will. The man knew that if he had known earlier about everything that could happen to her in the palace, he would never have sent her away. The Emperor thanked him with a grin and said that thanks to his daughter, the prince began to go out more often and no longer looked like the living dead. The Archduke was perplexed and asked the Emperor what he meant. The Emperor said that he liked his daughter and would be glad to see him as his father-in-law, and the Emperor also added that such a decision remained with him. The Emperor, with a smile, asked the Archduke to stay a little and listen to an entertaining story. The Archduke brought the young lady to his daughter and said that from now on she will be her personal escort. Of course she is still young, but her abilities are excellent, since she was able to become a member of the elite army. The girl said that my lady could call her Opisa. Ravenna was very happy that the girl was a knight, and she said that the young lady could call her Ravenna and asked him to take care of her. The Archduke approached his daughter and told her to be sure to keep the young lady near her at all times. Ravenna was temporarily under house arrest. Her father said that he did not understand at all why such a sane person like her constantly finds herself in incomprehensible situations. He was sure that she was lucky that the punishment was not so severe. Ravenna looked at the girl. She was embarrassed because but I was especially a very quiet child. She didn't understand whether everything would be fine with her, since she was even younger than her. The young lady heard an incomprehensible sound outside the window, and in the blink of an eye she ran to the window. Rivera was shocked and asked her to wait. A bird flew into their room. Riviera said that it was her friend, and she had been raising the bird for some time. Rivera said she was in captivity, but would like to see the crown prince's face. But, unfortunately, he is hiding from the young lady. Rivera knew he was deliberately avoiding her, but she had one idea she could use to see him. The name of the young girl was announced after the 11th episode. Kanu Raiba was Ranka's personal servant. The girl stood holding a tray of tea and felt someone's gaze on her. Rivera told her new friend that if he didn't meet her, she would follow the girl. The maid approached the prince and asked if he was going to sit on the tree all day. The maid said that there was one person from Lady Riviera who would come to the prince to meet him. The girl looked at the prince and said that she didn't know if her words would sound impudent, but she had to say it. She heard that the lady was currently in custody, although she was still a candidate for the position of crown princess. The girl thought that they should at least see each other one more time. Princip looked at her and said that if she knew that the words would sound impudent, then she should not have said anything at all, since he was not at all interested in what was on her mind. The girl realized her mistake and asked the prince for forgiveness for her mistake. The prince was shocked by the girl because she did not even notice that she was being followed. Ravenna stood under the tree where the prince was sitting, grinning at the fact that his man was supporting her. The prince looked at his chosen one and said that he did not think that she would follow the maid. The prince did not think that she was such an annoying girl after all, and he was surprised that she was doing such things. The young lady looked at him and said that she doubted that their conversation should go that way. She asked why didn't he come down and talk normally since she wasn't going anywhere. Her bird flew to the girl. The girl asked for forgiveness and said that she had no choice and would use the second method. The prince looked at her and said that she was doing truly annoying things. With the help of the bird, the young lady climbed up the tree. The prince was shocked because the girl was very noisy. The young lady looked at him with a smile and said that she had a cute bird and her name was Ruby. The prince was shocked and perplexed. He did not understand what his guards were doing all this time. The girl looked at him and asked if he wasn't curious about how she had lived until now. The girl looked at the prince and said that this was the same bird that she released when she first met him. With a smile, she said that she should have told earlier how she met this bird. He got close to her and said that he wasn't stuck with her because he liked it. He assured her that this way it would be difficult for them to look each other in the face. He asked her why she made such a difficult journey to him. He looked at her and asked if she really wanted to marry him that badly. The young girl was confused and said that she did not want to marry him under any circumstances. He looked at her and smiled. The prince realized that she didn't like such an idea either, and he said that he was just joking. Ravenna didn't understand how he could joke about such a situation. She sat next to him and understood that the atmosphere between them was pleasant to the extreme, but at the same time alarming. She said that in truth, she was not here because she liked him. She was personally curious about only one thing. Ravenna said that last time she read some notes about him, and she saw all the orders and all the experiments. As she read everything, she became very curious as to why he didn't try to use his abilities in a similar way. She looked at the young man and said that precious tears of blessing would help save many lives. She wondered why he didn't use them. She truly wanted to know why he didn't use them. Usually, everyone who asked for such information was divided into two types. They either wanted to use the young man or remove him from his place, and the young girl was not so smart. Ravenna smiled and asked what he was thinking about. The young man did not know whether she would be able to understand him if he told her everything, the real essence of the emperor. The emperor most likely killed the prince's father. After the murder, the man blamed the young prince's mother and saved him in order to use his power. After the memories, the prince was taken aback. The girl was shocked, and she asked if he was okay. The prince asked what difference it made to her, what happened to him. The girl sat and looked at him. For the first time she saw such an expression on the prince's face. She didn't know what to do, but she couldn't leave everything just like that. Ravenna reached out to the prince and hugged him. He was shocked because he didn't expect this. He wanted to push her away and shouted for her to leave. Ravenna told him not to twitch as they might fall. Ravenna hugged him and said that he started it first because when she was scared, he hugged her. He understood that when this young woman was next to him, all his affairs stopped and time slowed down. He touched her. The girl was in shock, did not understand what was happening and asked what he was doing, if he was trying to push her off. But the prince told her to keep her distance because her face made him nervous. After the incident, they sat, and there was an awkward feeling between them. She realized that it was in vain to help him. The girl looked into the distance and told the prince that she had finally made him stop trembling. The prince jumped from the tree and said that the emperor wanted his powers, but he didn't even know what he could use them for. He looked at his companion and finally said that this is all he can tell her right now.